Welcome. We've got Jen Ramsden with us today, Jersey girl, recovery advocate, woman in long-term recovery, almost 8 years. And now we can add business owner. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for
what
coming.
an introduction.
Thanks for coming to kick it with me today.
Of course, I can never say no to you, Melissa. You know I adore you.
Well, thank you for coming. Really, it's special to have you. All the way from Costa Mesa to Costa Mesa, right? Anyway, well, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it. Let's get right into it. How did a girl like you end up in a place like this? Let's start there. How did a girl like you, because you got sober young. I mean, that's not everybody's story, coming up on 8 years.
I did get sober young. It's honestly crazy to think and reflect on. I was 23 when I went to treatment. I turned 24 in my aftercare program. And this journey was not one that I really expected. And even being a young person, you're like, okay, I know that my life can't keep going on the way that it is when you're using, but I didn't know what was next. I didn't have any role models of what a life looked like in recovery, especially as a young woman. I just thought, okay, I'm gonna go to treatment, I'm gonna stop drinking, I'm gonna stop using drugs. What's the point from there on? But I couldn't keep doing it, but then I didn't know what to expect. I thought, okay, my life is gonna be over.
Well, okay, so you talked about aftercare. You went to aftercare. What even led you to treatment? I mean, much less aftercare, because I'm sure none of this was an easy road. So what even led you to get to treatment?
Well, it's so interesting. Navigating the treatment world is not easy as an uninformed person. I remember a year or two before going to treatment, we were calling my insurance trying to get recommendations. I don't think people that don't have a drinking or using problem do that.
No, they don't. That's not normal.
And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go to treatment for 30 days. I'm gonna be okay. Then everything will go back to normal, right? I'll be able to manage life. But where I grew up in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, people go to treatment, it's kind of hush-hush. Somebody in my family had been to treatment prior to me, so my family called that place that they trusted. It's a place where a lot of families in my area went, but the stigma was very real. So again, like I said, it was very hush-hush. You keep it on the down low. You don't really tell people what's going on.
Especially girl, right?
Especially. It's kind of unexpected.
Now, were you in college at this point? Are you in high school? What's going on?
Well, it's interesting. I was supposed to have graduated college, but I was just a semester shy.
Okay.
So I was in Miami at the time. I grew up in New Jersey. I was going to the University of Miami. I had this one semester left that I just kept saying, oh man, I'm gonna finish it, I'm gonna do it. I walked at graduation, and I couldn't get my life together enough to show up and do the things that I needed to do despite my best efforts. Mm-hmm. It was this internal battle, like I know I'm capable and I need to do this and this is important to me. But then it was like that addict voice in my head was like, okay, we need to feed this beast. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like a compulsion where everything else in my life just went to the wayside. But I kind of reached this bottom, and I had this moment of clarity, I guess you could call it. I don't really remember, but I called my dad one day, and I just surrendered, and I was like, I've tried to do this on my own so many times. I can't do it. I need help. I didn't have the heart to tell my dad exactly what I was doing, because I just didn't want to break his heart completely and have him worry even more. Because when you hear that your daughter is, shooting up heroin and cocaine and is an IV drug user, it's something that I didn't expect to happen to me. And I don't think that my dad or family members would be able to process that information right away.
Yeah.
So I was still trying to shield them from the reality. So my dad called me. He's like, oh geez, Jen. But they knew something, but I tried to shield them. The distance made it a lot easier to keep that facade.
Yes.
And being a young woman, I got to fly under the radar for a long time because nobody expects a quote-unquote girl like me to be doing what I was doing. And that's part of the reason I'm grateful to talk to you, is to kind of break that stigma, because I don't know, I just thought that an addict was somebody who was like homeless, living out of their car, like the things that we kind of associate with negatively. But what I've learned in recovery is we can look like a lot of different things and come in a lot of different packages that you wouldn't quite expect.
That's right.
And so my next step was, my dad called somebody and was like, where can I send my daughter? I don't know what to do. It's a tough process to navigate. Like, how do you know how to get a loved one into treatment or into care? And how do you know that's good care?
That's right. And especially there's a small, narrow window, as they say, when you're willing. It's like all the stars align, right?
Mm-hmm. And for me, I was just so crushed. I would wake up every day and I just would be kind of upset that I had to go through this cycle again. I had no meaning, no purpose, no friends. I was just a shell of the person I am now and the person that I used to be. And it's like I was this person that had so much potential, but I had stopped growing. And recovery gave me that chance to kind of initially come back to myself, and then grow from there and become all these wonderful things that you introduced me as. And
The Jen we know and love.
yeah. And I can be somebody that I'm proud to be today, which is something I could not say for a really long time. And I remember when I had that realization, I was like, wow, I can live with myself? What a concept.
So I'm imagining that you didn't go to college and wake up a drug addict one day. So was this something that, like, you can think back, like, early memories, and maybe there were some signs there early on?
Oh, yes. It didn't start in college for me. It absolutely started in high school. I think being a teenager, there's a lot of stressors that we deal with, a lot of big emotions, and I think at the time we don't know really how else to cope. So I was very angry, very self-destructive, and I remember I started drinking. I tried alcohol the first summer before going to high school, and it wasn't this huge aha moment they talk about, but for me I was like, this is kind of nice, and it's not as bad as everybody made it out to seem. And that's kind of how the progression went. You know those DARE programs where they scare you into thinking everything's bad?
Yes.
But for me, it was like, okay, I got a little taste of something, and I was like, I dispelled all the fear. And I was like, I think they were wrong about this. This might actually be kind of nice.
Right.
And it wasn't really peer pressure per se, but I was always in this pursuit to kind of alter how I felt inside. So when those opportunities kept presenting itself, so I would try, Adderall, I would take Xanax, and then turn to harder drugs. And I started doing cocaine when I was like 16. I was drinking on weeknights, drinking before I would go to school and spike my drink and not tell anybody. I almost got kicked off my lacrosse team because I was drunk or hungover, maybe still drunk from the night before. But I was so high functioning, and again, it's like as a girl, young girl, they don't expect you to be having these problems, and nobody ever talked to you about it.
Right. Well, I think, I think of the word chameleon, right? And you show what you want to show and you hide what you need to hide, right? And so it's that great cover up. And I think a lot of us, some of us, have people around us to make sure that, help us show the world what they want to show, what they want us to see, or what, I'm probably not saying that correctly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so you obviously were put together enough and excelled enough to get into University of Miami. I mean, that's no easy feat coming from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, it was a pretty tough school to get into, I think still at the time.
Yeah.
I was an honor student. I was captain of the lacrosse team. I was on a nationally ranked soccer team, although I quit my senior year. But yeah, I had over a 4.0 and I was still doing all these things.
I just keep thinking hiding in plain sight, right?
And I was also like self-harming, self-medicating. And I mean, I was in therapy too, but I mean, at that age, I was just, how much was I really sharing? I remember one time they made a suggestion for me to go to the drug and alcohol counselor down the hallway. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I don't need that.
Right. Right. You're not able to be honest with yourself, much less somebody else.
Well, in high school, too, I didn't think that I was old enough to have a problem. That didn't even cross my field of awareness. But now, in retrospect, I'm like so much could have been done or changed, or if I was intervened on earlier, if I was seen for what things really were. And that's part of why I do some of the advocacy work that I do.
Right. Yeah. So One Recovery, that's a big part of, you've gotten really involved with One Recovery and Lynn Peterson and her program. And so you see high school students all the time and get to work with them. So tell me about that and some parallels and what you see and how maybe that could have helped you.
Absolutely. So yeah, I've volunteered with this nonprofit organization that brings early intervention through human connection into local high schools. We also do parent groups, parent education groups, and community education groups, such as on the dangers of vaping or, marijuana use these days. But it's just, I love working with teens and adolescents because I think they're still at this stage where they're more malleable and open to, receiving help. And the things that we employ when they're younger perhaps can alter the course of their life. And maybe, if things do get worse down the line, they do know how to ask for help. They know how to vocalize their feelings. We give them a place to be seen and heard and talk about life struggles and whether that is substance use or is it mental health. It's just, this was all the stuff that I was bottling up for so long because I didn't feel that it was appropriate or safe to share. And I wonder, if I had that, maybe I would have been receptive, maybe I wouldn't have, but I love working with them, seeing the light come on in their eyes and seeing them flourish in their life in a way that perhaps I could have done as well.
Well, I love that word connection. I think that especially at that vulnerable age, that high school where you don't feel safe. I think that's a big one. You don't feel safe going to parents. A lot of parents, denial is huge. It's nobody's fault, but you don't want to think that your kid's struggling or that's happening, right? And it's nobody's fault. It's just a reality. But connection, human connection, and being able to talk candidly and freely and to know that to maybe, I don't know if normalize, is that the right word, or to be accepted, have a safe space to talk about it, is that?
I remember that was so absolutely freeing for me because when I was using, I would try to use in a socially acceptable way when I'd go to parties, drinking, maybe just doing a little bit of blow, like a lady. And then I'd go home and then I would really hit the bottle and then I would use how I really wanted to use and get completely obliterated. But it was like I was still so conscious about my appearance.
Yeah.
But I remember when I went to treatment, it felt so paradoxically freeing because I was in this place where I had more rules than I'd ever had in my life.
Yeah. The thing you thought you were always running from.
Oh, yeah. I love being a little rebel, bucking against the system.
Yeah.
But in treatment, I could talk openly and honestly about what was really going on. And for the first time, I felt so understood by a group of my peers. Mostly, the counselors helped so much as well, but I remember I felt so much less alone, and the secrets that I was hiding, they no longer felt like this heavy burden. And I always, was this hyper independent type of person. I can do it all on my own until I finally made that call to my dad. And I remember I could just
breathe.
Finally, right? And I allowed myself to be taken care of, but also put that work in to treatment in order to get better. And to share that burden with other people, I don't know, it's tough to even put words to it. I made friends with people that I would probably never cross paths with in my day-to-day life, and I felt as though I had a stronger connection with them than I did people that I'd known for 10 years.
Oh, absolutely. It's crazy. Sometimes just that one interaction just no better word than connection, that feeling of, me too. Just that feeling like, oh God, I'm not alone.
And I wasn't too much either, because if you tell certain people the things that you're doing, their eyes might like fly out of their head. But when you tell somebody who's been through similar experiences, it's almost like anything isn't too much. And we could even laugh about it.
That's right. Yeah, some of the laughter, it is, it's like music. It is. Speaking of music, this has not been, it may have felt like a death sentence early on.
Yes.
Early on, but this has not been boring, right? Anything but. You love music, right?
Yes. So that's what I thought when I was a young person in recovery. Okay, where do I go from here? I'm going to be sober. I'm going to have no life, especially coming from a city like Miami where I thought everybody's lives revolved around partying, drinking, going out. I was like, okay, I can't do that anymore. But once I had, enough time and my legs under me enough in recovery, I began to explore those interests to see, okay, do I still enjoy going to music and festivals? And I've learned I still do. And I can go anywhere as long as I have a reason. And I've actually felt a really amazing recovery community that also goes to music festivals. And so I have other people that are in similar situations, but I love just being like connected, dancing, being covered in glitter.
Glitter. Oh my God.
But being young in recovery, it isn't a death sentence. I actually was able to knock things off of, my bucket list that I couldn't do when I was using, because you couldn't leave too far from the dope dealer because you'd get sick. And I didn't want people to know what I was doing, so it kept my world really small. And since being in recovery, I've gotten to travel to countries that I had on my bucket list, such as Italy. I got to go to Greece recently. I go to music festivals. I have quality friends in my life. Life has actually gotten really good. Not to say that I haven't dealt with some really tough things as well, but I'm equipped to deal with the highs and lows of today without having to alter my state of mind and numb myself to fit the situation anymore.
Well, would you say that through this process of, this journey, so to speak, of recovery, would you say that the connections that you've made and people and relationships and all of that, would you say, what would be the one thing that you would say that what are some mistakes that you've made with relationships?
Ooh. How much time do you have?
Well, I think that young people, I've seen a lot of people make mistakes in relationships.
I agree. So if we're talking from a friendship perspective to begin, I remember in my first year of recovery, I had this mentality of kumbaya, we're all in this together, we're all working to better ourselves and recover. And then I remember I got screwed over by some people, and it felt like very much of a high school mentality in some respects. And I quickly learned that just because I'm on this journey and I'm trying to better myself and not engage in old behaviors doesn't mean that everybody that's sober is automatically a good person. So there's a difference between physical sobriety and then active recovery. And I had to learn sometimes the hard way not to automatically assume, like, you're sober, you're a good person. You can still be sober and do awful, awful things, but you just don't have an excuse anymore, I don't think, which might make it worse. I don't know. But who am I to judge?
Right.
But I definitely have had to be discerning in, who I let into my life, because not everybody can have the privilege of access to you.
Okay, that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yes. And romantic relationships, oh goodness, definitely made a lot of missteps there. I had, didn't listen to some of those arbitrary rules they tell you in the program, like don't date in the first year and all of that. But actually that crazy guy, I think, led me to you.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, true. So listen, but we learn a lot.
We do, and I think that the work is never done, and I think that we learn a lot about ourselves through relationships.
Agree.
Which is something you taught me.
Listen, I've learned a lot the hard way. I like to learn, I like to learn the hard way.
You and me both sometimes.
No, I just think sometimes when, especially, this is just because you get sober doesn't mean, everything gets fixed. I always say this is a whole process, and there's so many tools that we're awake to receive. You don't have to keep making the same mistakes over and over again, but mistakes are part of it. It's just, I like this. Maybe I'm jealous of people that get sober young and get this opportunity. Maybe that's what it is.
I agree. I love the time that I got sober because I feel that I was old enough, that I had experienced enough at my young age. There's a few substances I still haven't tried, but I don't feel the need to be like, oh, I haven't done enough.
Right.
I feel like I did enough for a few lifetimes. I don't think I left many stones unturned. And I just remember going to treatment. I just thought like, okay, this is just going to be temporary. Like, this isn't going to be forever. And I'm so privileged too that I haven't had to relapse yet.
Yeah.
Not saying I won't. I say yet just because it could happen. I don't plan on it. But I just remember in treatment, everyone kept telling me, like, hey, be careful if you go back out, if you do this or do that, like, just don't use as much. And I remember that was almost fuel to my fire. And I was like, screw you guys, I'm going to show you. Why are you saying this to me? I'll be fine. But working in treatment for as long as I have, I do understand now that that is pretty common. But young 23-year-old Jen, who turned 24 in treatment and got a sheet cake and glow sticks for her birthday,
Oh my God, that's so
could
cute.
not imagine having this much time or staying sober for this long. I'm grateful, and I wouldn't have changed it for anything. I don't know, my using, it gave my life direction in a weird way because I was able to grasp onto recovery and build a life that I didn't want to escape from anymore. And the reason I've stayed sober this long is because my life now has become so much better than what it was using. It's so much more fulfilling. I have purpose in my career. I have genuine friends and relationships. And like I said, I get to have these really cool life experiences now that my world is larger, when I'm not stuck, beholden to withdrawals or drugs and all of my secrets. And if I could change one thing, it would be, taking advantage of school and the friends and all those opportunities that I had. That's one thing that I did miss out on. I remember joining a sorority because I was like, oh, I should make girlfriends. This will be really great. But I was too high to actually connect.
Yeah.
And I've definitely tried to remedy those things and learn from those past mistakes and just take it forward into my life and just kind of spread the message that getting sober young is actually quite a gift, like you said.
Well, but back to prior to getting sober and connecting with people, I think that's prior to being authentic, and I think authenticity then leads to purpose, because I'll touch on that. So once you get sober and you do start on this, path of finding purpose, because I'm sure it's constant unfolding, but finding purpose. You spoke about your work with One Recovery, but talk about your purpose in helping others. What do you expand on that for me?
Absolutely. I think over time, yes, I continue to get closer and closer. But what I find is, like, the longer I'm sober, the older I keep getting, more continues to unfold and be revealed. I can be kind of scatterbrained, and I have a lot of different pursuits. But prior to helping people, I first had to prove that I could be employable.
Oh, yes. Those days, yes.
So I worked at a kind of a higher end workout store for women and was folding yoga pants.
Nice.
I had a great job and a great time there. It's funny. It's one of those things you look back on, and it's just you kind of look back on it with some fondness.
Like learning to show up.
Yeah, I just need to prove that, hey, I can show up, I can actually hold a job, and actually get employed was pretty cool and wild, especially when you have such a large gap in your work history.
Right.
I don't know if you can be like, say you're an entrepreneur when you're really dealing drugs. I'm not sure.
Or consumer. Great consumer.
But even before getting sober, my major in college was human and social development with a minor in psychology. And I was drawn to that track because it talked about the practical application of theory. So how do I take this and actually apply it to real lives and use this to actually help people, improve the world? And I always wanted to leave the world a little better than I found it, which is tough to do when you're literally in a tornado of self-destruction.
And killing yourself?
Yeah. How can you help other people when you can't help yourself, right?
Maybe you knew something back then, deep down. I believe that, actually. I do believe that.
Possibly, but I do think, too, like a lot of people that have their own healing want to help heal other people, because it's almost like some of us want to do our work vicariously. But what I like to share now is, as still a younger person in recovery, is that there is hope on the other side and that there is a life worth fighting for in recovery. I wouldn't be here if that wasn't true. And so that is kind of the message that I want to share to people. Because I remember when I was using, I felt so hopeless. I couldn't fathom anything else. But then when the fear of staying the same was greater than my fear of change is when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to face this unknown and I'm going to see what the world is like without drugs and alcohol. Which might sound silly to normal people because, we get praised for doing what a lot of people are able to do just on the regular.
Right.
But for me, that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life and has become the foundation for everything I've accomplished since. But this feeling that I've found that I didn't think was possible is part of my purpose in terms of wanting to share that with people who can't see it quite yet. And that's why I love working with the teens, is I want to show them that, life can still be good as a young person in recovery, or, changing the way they think about their relationship to substances, or, looking for different coping mechanisms. And that's part of, why we opened this treatment center in Knoxville is, I got sober in Southern California. There's so much great treatment out here. And my recovery landed me in a field where I can use my passion for helping others, my talents of relating to other people, to share this message and then create something that hopefully people will be attracted to. And my work in treatment has shown me so much. And creating this new program is, I really want to expand access to care in parts of the country that are a little lesser served. And because I believe that everybody deserves a chance to get this feeling that I didn't think was possible. And I just want to expand the accessibility to do so. So we opened a substance abuse and mental health outpatient, and that also comprises of a teen outpatient in Knoxville, Tennessee. And it's been such a wonderful process. Also very, very stressful.
And how are you doing that from California? Are you spending a lot of time out there? And you've obviously got a great team.
Yes, so I have a great group of partners, a great clinical team there. I'm out there about once a month. But again, like we spoke about, is I'm not doing this alone. I have a lot of people that I can rely on and trust, which is something that I continue to challenge and practice is a practice of mine. Growing up in high school, I was always the kid in the group projects that just wanted to do everything and do it right, quote unquote.
Right.
And so being able to rely on a team, learning to face different challenges, but ultimately to help people improve their lives is so special. And I think it's such a privilege, as I'm sure you would agree, to witness, the miracle of people getting their lives back and seeing that light turn on in their eyes. There's absolutely nothing like it. As much heartache and tragedy as there can be working in this field with, the loss of loved ones or people that choose not to get help quite yet. I just keep holding on and for those people that are willing, and hope that if they're not willing now, they will become willing later. Because I don't believe anybody's worth giving up on.
I love that. And, when you say, like people were telling you when you were in treatment that, if you relapse, I wish so much, and I'm sure you do too, I want to put words in your mouth, that people would stop saying that, and that people would stop saying that relapse is a part of this thing, because in my heart, I don't believe that. I just don't, because it's not,
It doesn't have to be.
It's just not, but there is that key word that you mentioned. There's willingness, right? And that's the key, So I do wish that people would just take that out of there, because I feel like that just adds this, like, oh, well,
I can come back.
I can come back. And unfortunately, I think, this epidemic shows, that's not always the case. And it's really sad.
I agree. And I love the fact that I think it's said mostly so that people that are or have relapsed don't feel too much shame in coming back, but it doesn't need to be part of the story. I just remember I didn't have a plan B. This was my plan A, and that was the only plan I had, and I was going to stick to it. At least initially, though, I wasn't as set in this path. At first, I was in treatment, and I was like, okay, I'm going to use ecstasy again when I get out. I think, being sober will reset my brain chemistry. Things will be fun again, right? But I'll stay away from the stuff that's problematic.
Right.
And it took me until being in treatment that I realized I was a drug addict. I didn't realize I was an alcoholic. But then I realized if you're waking up and drinking a bottle of wine that's on your bed table, I don't think that's what most people do.
No, and I always, and unfortunately that word has a lot of stigma and just alcoholic in general. And I tell people all the time I didn't become an alcoholic until I went to treatment. That's when it happened. And then I started slowly understanding what the definition of alcoholism was, and that it's an umbrella word, and that I have the ism, and I can have too much of anything. Give me shopping, food, no food, boys, no boy, any of it, all of it. I'm a consumer, and so I'm always trying to fill that something, and it'll rear its ugly head. And can you identify with that?
Oh, absolutely. Cross addiction. And I don't think anybody goes into treatment or AA being fully convinced that they're an alcoholic or fully convinced that they're going to spend the rest of their lives this way.
Right.
And I wasn't either. But the longer I stayed in the rooms of AA and in the program, I could see that this ism you speak of was more applicable to the rest of my life than just the substances, which is clearly identifiable. And being a young person in recovery, I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to stick with this, but I'm doing this right now, and I'm going to give it my best shot. And so I told myself I was going to give myself to a year.
Yep, I love that attitude.
And see how I felt, because
that's realistic.
I thought so too, and I wanted to give it a real and a fair shot, because even a few months in, I was still having trouble sleeping, insomnia, like chills, those the post-acute withdrawal symptoms. And I wanted to know, okay, what is it really like to be free from these substances? Because it still had its grip on me. I was still having using dreams in early recovery, but that stuff doesn't even plague me anymore. It's so crazy. I don't miss it, but I wanted to give myself that real shot. But I remember I kind of chose to stick on this path prior to reaching that year mark, because I remember I started laughing again. And that was the one thing that really hit home to me, especially that first belly laugh that I had in treatment. It almost made me sad because it felt so foreign to me after such a long time. And I was like, wow, I've been missing out on this for such a long time, even though I was self-medicating, putting all these different substances in my system to try to feel that. And like a good addict, I want to chase a good feeling. And so I'd gotten a little taste of that, and I was like, okay, there might be something to this. There might be something worth sticking around for. And that first little bout of laughter gave me hope that a greater and better life was possible. And not saying I'm always laughing, but it was enough for me to be like, okay, let's give this a real try. And I remember that laughter and that feeling and that joy and that connectedness persisted through that first year. And I remember prior to that mark, I was like, okay, I like this. I like my life as it is. I didn't fully love myself yet then. I was still learning to. But I was willing to kind of continue down this path and explore what else it had to offer me. And that included like healthy friendships, traveling, festivals, working, my first big girl job. I remember when I got my first business card and my first company credit card, I couldn't believe it. I was like, who's gonna trust me with this? And I remember I took it so serious. I worked my tail off, and it led to so many more opportunities, which led me to you, which ultimately led me to creating this new place that hopefully will allow a lot more people to access and find recovery. But, when you're detoxing in your little bed with all your meds, you're not thinking that this is what your future has in store. You're just trying to get through. And that's why I'm grateful we could have this conversation, is because I couldn't conceptualize what I have now, and I want to share about it so that people that can't conceptualize it can maybe see it and hear it, and maybe see that, eventually it could be possible.
The ripple. The ripple.
Right.
Okay, so where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I hope that my treatment facility will expand. I hope we'll have a great reputation, or continue to. I want to go to Burning Man.
I love it.
Years.
I love it.
And then I have a few different travel places I want to travel on my list, like including Bali and Thailand, and who knows, maybe live out of the country at some point. That might be beyond the 5 years. Maybe own property, which seems crazy at this stage. And
you never know.
I know. But it's interesting, all these dreams felt so out of reach previously, but I'm like a big believer in manifesting. So anything that I truly want, that I continue to actively work towards and put my energy into, I know will come true. And so I'm excited for the next 5 years. And I'm grateful that it's not COVID anymore, so I can actually live.
Knock on wood.
I know.
Knock on wood.
It took the last year of my 20s and catapulted me into, this adulthood that I've been putting off for a while.
That's crazy, right? Well, listen, I'm just so honored that you came today. Thank you so much for sharing your truth, your authenticity, your future, and where you were to get here. It's raw, real, and hopeful. And I just appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Melissa. You're amazing.
Thank you.